a special go f yourself to this so-called self-defined centrist and enlightened thinker for literally platforming something that directly led to crazy amounts of violence happening on the streets of Britain as we speak. Let's go over to the dear friends of the show, Al Jazeera, who send me many millions of dollars every week, and see what's behind the spread of violent far-right protests in the UK. Okay, I know quite a little bit of about the EDL, quite a little bit about Tommy Robinson in particular. He's an ex-ultra thug that saw the rise of Islamophobia in the UK as a great stepping stone into becoming a very, by the way, Canadian Cup. Look, I have Canadian Cup. We stand in Canada today, okay? Standing the second most genocidal North American state. Brilliant. There's only 3, so the competition isn't very tight. But no, he started as a shill originally. My main reason why I think he's a shill, he does believe because he's racist, but he's really doing it for the fame and for the money, is because the second the EDL kind of started falling through the cracks, he immediately abandoned it and joined PEGIDA UK, okay? PEGIDA was originally a German far-right movement that was, again, specifically targeting Islamophobes. With Islamophobia, you need to understand that it's a far-right rebrand on what can be touched and what cannot be touched. The far-right in Western Europe in general understood that being outright racist towards black people or Jews, of course, will still garner you far-right success, but became somewhat of a taboo. And literally that started around 10 years ago in the 2015s, 2016s. They retargeted towards Muslim people living inside of the country and potential Muslim immigration patterns, which allowed them to really grow, but thanks to certain crackdowns, etc., that went nowhere. I have to be careful here. The German state wants to bring a new law which can lead to deportation for liking pro-Palestinian content. Yes, please do. Please be careful. We called this here, literally, remember when we watched this cuck interview, guess who literally replatformed him, brought him back into the limelight. So we watched this a month ago, and Tommy Robinson in this literal interview towards the end said that towards the end of July we will start organizing and going with some proper British lads, which refers to white English people, to the streets. Okay, he called for it on an official platform by Jordan B. Peterson. 3 million views. We called it right here live on stream, and what happened immediately afterwards? Exactly that. This is a concerted effort. This guy now has budgets. This guy now has media behind him, and he is reintroduced into the so-called respectable far-right kind of idea. They really whitewashed him after he pushed that dude into the car and almost went to jail with a very large documentary that he made, and then again made a couple of milli out of that. This guy's rich at this point. They started the push back then, and now obviously our good old man Tommy Robinson used the moment with the unfortunate killing by that piece of shit of 3 little girls to manipulate public information on who was it that committed the murder. Afterwards, obviously, everybody found out that the information was wrong. You know, it was not necessarily the person that they were talking about originally, but it no longer mattered because it's still a black kid. So it's still like, okay, whatever, the fucking immigrants. The EDL is hyper-focusing usually on we should stop the boats, not necessarily kick the current ones out. But that's obviously the direction it will eventually evolve into. They use the classic, extremely weird, please stop being so weird rhetoric about marauding bands that steal children and molest children, etc., etc. And the pitch is always that it happens to be Pakistanis or Arabs, etc., that are doing it. So that's basically the direction they're going into. They announced it. They did it. This piece of shit platform that's so hard did not ask more than 4 questions in the matter of 2 hours, and now there's goddamn riots in England, okay? Targeting specifically people of color and minorities of all different stripes, right? So a special go fuck yourself to this so-called self-defined centrist and enlightened thinker for literally platforming something that directly led to crazy amounts of violence happening on the streets of Britain as we speak. You might be asking why now? Because Labour won. Okay, that's why. Now it is a perfect moment because absolutely anything bad that happens in the UK will be blamed on Labour. Back when the Tories ruled, it makes no sense for you to push the Overton window to the right. They're already economically so right-wing. All the millionaires were making their good money. No, they didn't need anybody to stir up the beehive. Well, now is the perfect moment to stir up the beehive because you will have far-right white boy cucks doing horrible things to minorities, and you will blame Labour for further dividing the country, and then you can throw in a little bit of anti-white conspiracy theories and communist takeover, conspiracy theories, and you have a win-win-win as the Overton window keeps moving further to the right. Even the far-right Swedish party is defending him, but their only connection to the UK is old ties with UK fascist organizations. Yes, the main thing that kind of first brought Tommy into the limelight as actually being far-right is his connection to Scandinavian far-right groups. I know this guy very well. From back in the day and recent research, I've wasted so many brain cells learning more about non-neck Tommy. You're all fucking welcome, okay? The trauma of having had to be, mama bird that takes and chews through all the information and then deep throat feeds it to you. But ignore my non-academic Twitch speaker ass, and let's actually listen to respectful journalists most likely say literally all the same things that I've just said. The Nordic Resistance Movement recently got added as a terrorist group, yeah. And again, remember, these far-right groups, they're there usually to make certain types of rhetoric more okay for the more central parties. Some of them do believe in complete takeover of society, etc., etc. But my pitch on the EDL is literally, it's an arm of the Tory party that allows them to point at someone and say, hey, we are not as far right as they are. The leadership of the EDL in general is just there to push the Overton window as far as possible. And now under Labour, it's a perfect moment to do so.
Days of rioting in England.
I'm basing that analysis on knowing Tommy Robinson. That guy's in it for the fame, for the money, and for the glory. He wouldn't change so many parties if he had a consistent fucking ideology, except for, I hate Muslim people.
Social media has been used by the far right to spread rumors about immigrants and organize protests that have become violent. What's behind the surge in violence? This is Inside Story.
Hasn't news always been so fucking insane? Like, they will play like this chill corporate music in the background, like 17 children murdered in cold blood, 15 sexual assault cases, and half of the city is burning. The world is entering nuclear apocalypse. Thank you. My name is John Johnson, and this is News 2024 in 24/7. Welcome, welcome. Why has this ever been normal? Here's the weather, yeah.
Thousands of police officers are on high alert in the UK after rioting in cities and towns in England and in Belfast. The violence has been blamed by Prime Minister Keir Starmer on far-right activists and groups organizing themselves online. Individuals, rather than organizations, seem to have been driving the protests, almost all focused around migrants.
Groups organizing themselves online. He said it as if it's like a fucking thing.
The last Conservative government had planned to deport illegal migrants to Rwanda, a plan dropped by the new Labour one.
There you go, we're starting. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Labour is now going to be a perfect enemy to throw stones at very easily. Come on, you're talking about coincidences here. The Tories lose, and immediately Tommy Robinson goes and Jordan Peterson starts getting platformed everywhere. His documentary starts doing crazy numbers on YouTube. He starts organizing, he starts getting funding. Yeah. This isn't even Yugopnik conspiratorial hour here, okay? This is the classic fucking center-right using more radicalized racists to push the fucking Overton window. That's all it fucking is. But unfortunately, not even unfortunately, both are equally bad to an extent. The conservatives sometimes lose control. And then they get fucked by those very same far-right guys, which to an extent is what happened with all the Brexit parties in the UK. And all the Brexit parties, mate. I am completely standing behind my words here. This is totally funded by domestic capitalists that want to see the Tories back. It's crazy for me to defend, I'm a big fucking Jeremy Corbyn guy. And this is not his fucking Labour. So I piss on this Labour as well. But, in this case, they are going to paint the entire left as Labour in the UK. And that is why it's important for us to an extent, not defend it, but be like, the Labour has nothing to do with race riots. What the fuck are you doing?
Why such a widespread and sudden upsurge in violence? And how have politics and media affected attitudes on migration? We'll be discussing this with our guest shortly. But first, this report from Victoria Gatenby.
Riots by...
Look at these pasty boys, mate. Straight off the matchy, bruv, yeah.
Far-right protesters have spread across the UK, sparked by a series of murders in a seaside town in the northwest of England. 3 girls aged 6, 7 and 9 were stabbed to death in a knife attack at a children's dance class in Southport.
It's crazy, the local community for, that community that was just trying to cry, domestic white English people, etc., etc. They hated the shit out of the EDL fuckers coming and kidnapping it. These groups don't care about dead white people, okay? They care about more dead brown people. But they don't care about specifically punishing bad people who do something. They care about spreading misinformation and generalizing everybody who happens to look like a piece of shit as pieces of shit, okay?
He was born in Britain. But users on social media falsely claimed he was a Muslim asylum seeker.
There are good football hooligans. Shout out to the Green Brigade. Of course there are, man. I know more than a few of them. The UK is the country that took skinheads, which was a fucking super wholesome ass fucking punk culture, okay? And like properly internationalist, and they turned them into the most modern version of a neo-Nazi. Ship anything to Britain, and they send it back in a bottle of water. It was really bad. Like, even I felt ashamed. Holy shit.
Elected Reform MP Nigel Farage was criticised for speculating whether, in his words, the truth was being withheld by authorities. A mosque in Southport was attacked by a far-right mob.
Local communities are being thrown apart, and these people from outside are coming and literally destroying the mosque. And we've spoken to the imam from Southport. He said he had to barrage a lock.
Right now, the biggest hope, or at least the leadership of the EDL, is somebody going and killing one of those cunts, okay? I'm unironically really not fucking encouraging it. If somebody goes and stabs or shoots one of these pasty, stupid gorilla imbeciles, everything is going to get worse. Much fucking worse. And these will not look like riots. This will look like child's play, okay? This is the play. This is a display of hatred and an attempt to push what is acceptable political rhetoric further to the right, normalizing it, as you beautiful children say. I shouldn't have said the word beautiful children. That is always very strange. My beautiful child soldiers, there you go. Yeah, go after the puppet master, not the puppet. Yeah, they burned a fucking library. I mean, there's nothing a right-winger hates more than books. The English were the spice middlemen, never learned how to use them, just sold them.
In Hartlepool, in the northeast of England, a police car was set alight. And in London, crowds pelted the gates of Downing Street and fought with police officers.
You see how encouraged you feel when you're no longer wearing a mask? Said the guy literally Twitch streaming with a mask, okay?
That prompted the Prime Minister to hold an emergency meeting with police chiefs.
Look at all the different aesthetics. This is super interesting to me. Okay, so we got the hipsters, right? We got the classic super old balding guy, right? We got the classic old football hooligan, like OG of OGs, classic shit. We got the kids. Did you see the kids? There was a tiny kid right here, very tiny kid, and then the guys with the masks, the ones that need to do a couple of hits, okay? The right accepts all, as long as you pass this, proceeds to do the Peter Griffin thing with skin tone. Unironically, the EDL actively tries to recruit Westerners called people of color, but only if they're not Muslim, because it's hyper-focusing on Islamophobia. That's their whole pitch. Everything else relatively compatible with the British way of life, but Islam in general isn't. It's always the super cringe pitches like, oh, look, they built a mosque. And probably in the mosque, there's criminals. And those criminals are also selling drugs to English boys. Again, Tommy, that's what he used to refer to white people because he can't say the word white people. It's a snake eating in its own ass type of rhetoric.
So far as the far right is concerned, this is coordinated, this is deliberate, this is not a protest, it is a group of individuals who are absolutely bent on violence.
The OG racists telling the young racists that they are soft, the young racists telling the old racists that they were playing against plumbers and milkmen back then. I was surprised Keir Starmer grew a little spine so quick. Yeah, because this is also, like, ironically relatively decent for him. This is an easy thing to say, oh, this bad. That's why, like, easy political points. This guy doesn't do anything that's 100 miles away from controversial.
In Nottingham, officers were confronted by far-right protesters. In Hull, a crowd demonstrated outside a hotel housing migrants, and disorder broke out in Belfast.
This is multiple cities. This is specific locations. You know how hard it is to go with 10 people and visit the city and go to see a particular castle? You know how much harder it is with 150 to a city you've never been to find a specific mosque or a specific library or a specific hotel? There's guys on phones. There's guys in safe houses. They got budgets. That's what I'm saying. This is busing prices. This is busing them back. This is paying for all those who get arrested. This is money. Don't fucking even think for a second that it's spontaneous or something. One thing is to have some decentralized bullshit protests without concrete forms of organizing. This literally reminds me of how the Black Hundreds behaved in Russia around the time of the revolution. Yes.
We fought them in the 30s, we fought them in the 50s, we fought them in the 70s in Britain. We will not allow the right wing to dominate our working class communities.
This is an actual, like, in my opinion, this dude, I don't remember his name, but this is a power level hiding actual fucking unionizing radical communist, okay? Bolder, less hipster looking Jeremy Corbyn, okay? And sure, if the left was smart, they can use this for massive growth and unification, just like our comrades from good old, bad old France did. But as we all know, leftists not really good at political organizing anymore, so... But no, there's still hope. It would have been awesome if Labour was still ran by an actual class-conscious leadership that could really, really help use the current right-wing Overton window push and the riots to garner much more support, okay? And to radicalize the base that they have. But that would necessitate an actual class-conscious leadership of Labour, which they do not have. If they just have conversations inside of Labour, not even outside of Labour, of being like, you see, this is what happens if we allow capitalism to continue in the direction it does. It will eventually want to protect itself by creating bigger and more radicalized far-right mobs, which will then monopolize violence in the state and use the language of bigotry and hatred to keep the status quo, aka capitalism, alive. You know, that's what they could pitch to their own members, and especially well, because they will be like, and you will always be the first ones they come to. Even if you were associated with Labour once 7 years ago, you're on their list. You're going even before the ethnic minorities. That should, make two things click in their brain and make them a bit more class conscious. But we don't have a Labour like that, so that's not going to happen.
The new Labour government is facing a national crisis, and the Prime Minister and Home Secretary are having to focus on stopping violence across the streets of the United Kingdom.
Do you notice how many kids are there? It's fucked up. But it's also kind of like, you literally need to be a child, be extremely hateful. Like the whole pitch, they are building the mosques, and in the mosques they have the gangs, and the gang steals children, especially the girls, and they do SA, and then they sell them back to Muslim countries. You literally have to be 12 to be like, oh my God, that makes sense.
Joining us from London is Shabna Begum, Chief Executive Officer of the Runnymede Trust, a British race equality and civil rights think tank. In Oxford, Katie Brown is a postdoctoral fellow at Maynooth University in Ireland. She focuses her research on mainstream far-right discourse. Sohan D'Souza is a computational social scientist interested in the links between disinformation and political extremism.
The last two combined is literally me. I'm a different power level. I'm multiple political analysts put into one. I am the uplifted holy trinity of understanding class consciousness and yet the fascist mind in one which is never one. Pray to me, children, my great child soldiers. We shall earn the great Gunnar state one day. Okay, I don't know where this sketch is going, but what I'm saying is I'm great, okay?
Why has there been such a widespread and relatively sudden upsurge in violence?
I think it's unsurprising given the long lineage of anti-immigrant, Islamophobic demonization that we've seen in our mainstream politics now for years, but particularly intensifying in the last few weeks and months since October 7th and the general election campaign, both during and afterwards. The kind of narratives that we saw being espoused by our mainstream political parties. And so it's unsurprising when you see such a hostile environment created by our politicians that then erupts on our streets.
We've witnessed with the election campaign and actually long predating that with Brexit as well, the normalization of anti-immigration discourses.
These are great, milquetoast classic academic analyses, but I don't like using the term normalization of this sort of rhetoric because it never went away. Not hating Muslim people or minorities in the UK, being kind of in the unspoken mainstream, never went away. Accepting your fellow neighbor was never normalized in the first place. Because they're doing the pitch, we were living together and loving ourselves and singing Kumbaya, and England was so nice, and now we're normalizing hatred. You never normalized lack of hatred. You never actively combated hatred. And this goes back all the way to the 2000s, to the 2010s, with the whole spiel about tolerance. fucking tolerance. They're not doing anything bad by being Muslim or being from Jamaica. Your neighbors, it's so dudes, go and fucking talk to them, right? Well, there was no like state action towards normalizing not hating your neighbor. So that organically happened. People interact with people of other ethnicities and groups, and it becomes more chill. But there was never an active process by the English state or by any Tory government, which that's the only thing they had for so long, towards normalizing relations between ethnicities, religious groups, etc., etc. Kettlefish. England has historically loved Muslims and Arab nations. Just don't look at anything Churchill said ever. Yeah.
At these protests, there's been signs that say "Stop the boats," and that's a direct quote from the previous Conservative government. And then you've got Labour coming in. Now, they did scrap the Rwanda policy, as you mentioned, but they did that often kind of claiming that it was because the policy was ineffective. They weren't challenging the premise of it or the principle of it.
Exactly.
And
this has all been there.
Secretary Yvette Cooper has said that the security of Britain's borders is her top priority as well. So we've seen a continuation of this violent rhetoric from the mainstream, and that's played a key role in emboldening actors and creating the atmosphere that we're seeing in Britain at the moment.
I know I'm being boring at this point, but pushing the overtone window to the right is by literally normalizing that sort of rhetoric inside of the political context. Parties can run with that platform publicly so that the racists who are hiding their racism power level or whatever can know who to vote for. Insane how much far-right misinformation people have been eating up, especially in the UK, especially when it comes to the immigration thing. Like the top 5 countries that immigrants come from are other European and quote-unquote white nations, because the problem was never immigration, it's just pure racism. Yeah, I had a British professor that always did a great joke. He's like, Brexit didn't happen because of Pakistanis or Indians or Arabs. It happened because of too many Romanians and Bulgarians. Like, ironically, like quote-unquote white people. It's always about the foreign element.
The anti-immigrant narrative has always been racialized, and we've seen that kind of spill out into the violence and the way that violence has targeted not just migrant communities, not just people seeking asylum in this country, but settled Muslim communities and Black people from some of the videos that we've seen circulated on social media. So this is a highly racialized and acts of racist rioting that we're seeing on our streets.
There's no reason for me to shit at them, but they're saying nothing. Like, they're like, racist shit in politics is being used more, and because of that, certain groups are acting on it and then doing physical racism by, rioting and up mosques and so on. Like, yeah, how is this news?
Misinformation around all this first spread online that the suspect in the murder of these girls was a Muslim immigrant. Then far-right groups falsely claimed the suspect was an asylum seeker. How much of a role has social...
They don't care. It ended up being a black kid, so they're all like, they don't give a fuck, okay? They would have really fucked up if it ended up being like a white boy named Timmy from Scotland, right? But they were lucky on that front.
Media played in driving all of this.
It has played a huge role, I think. We can see it from the very beginning when these Potemkin news sites that basically do nothing but put out mostly unverified information, spread the fake name of this alleged asylum seeker person.
I feel like they're just dumb, poor English peasants mostly. Yeah, the guys on the street are, but the guys organizing it aren't. You need to understand that this was like an insanely common occurrence until 2017, 2018. They would do this shit absolutely all the time. But then they probably sat down with the fucking Tories and this was worked out. And, they started losing careers. They started getting arrested. They started having like sexual assault charges levied against them and so on. Talking about the EDL in particular. All of a sudden going on Daily Wire, having multi-million view documentaries, and they somehow get deployed in 5+ cities all over England. They were welcomed back into the fold. I tried to get out, but they pulled me back in. Okay? Tommy Robinson. The Gav Gamer. Nothing new being discovered here. It's historically how whiteness has been used to blame immigration, whether it's Romanian, Italian, Polish, Irish, whatever, on the conservatives. Gutting resources for communities and blame marginalized groups, predominantly now Muslims and Black, Brown, and Asian British people. Exactly. And not a lot of new fire we can discover here, except that it's still disgusting and smells like white boy. Subscribe or baby Yoda gets it. Subscribe or Baby Yoda gets it. Do you want Baby Yoda to live? You must subscribe.